This story is 100% true, and it still gives me goosebumps to this day. This strange event happened around 10 years ago when my husband and I were still living in a different town. He worked as a civil engineer on a site that was about 4 hours away from home, so he would travel back on Fridays for the weekend. A little background on where we lived. Our rental house was on a small farm which grew tomatoes. There were 3 other houses on the property, but they were all spread out, not close together. 2 of the houses were occupied at the time, the other neighbors were quiet and kept mostly to themselves. The houses were far enough apart that you couldn't hear any noise from the others. None of us worked on the farm itself. The farm workers lived further away up over the hill and would walk to work along a gravel road that ran right past our backyard. It was the kind of place that could get incredibly quiet, dark, and eerie at night, especially if you were alone. One Friday evening, my husband was driving home after a long week. He still had about an hour left to go, and I was busy in the kitchen preparing our dinner. Out of nowhere, our 2 dogs started barking like crazy outside. I tried peeking out the window but couldn't see anything. I was too scared to open the door and check, so I just stood there, frozen, wondering what was going on. As I was walking back to the stove to adjust the heat, our home phone suddenly rang. Now, keep in mind, we never use that phone and don't really give out the numbers since we only use our cell phones. So I was confused, but picked it up anyway. There was nothing but silence on the other end. I thought it must have been a wrong number, so I hung up. Just as I walked away, the phone rang again. I answered. Hello? Still no response. But then I heard something that made my heart stop. Someone was breathing heavily on the other side. Hello? I said again. No answer, but the breathing got louder and heavier. I was terrified. My pulse was racing and I quickly hung up the phone. Meanwhile, the dogs outside were still barking frantically. Before I could process what was happening, the lights in the house went out. Complete blackout. It was pitch black inside. I peeked out the window again, this time in the direction of the other houses. The 2 houses with occupants still had their lights on. What on earth is happening? Why was my house the only one in the dark? The dogs were still going crazy outside, and I felt paralyzed with fear. I called my husband and told him everything that had just happened. I told him to hurry up and get home. At that point, I was curled up on the couch, hugging my knees, wondering if I was in the middle of some horror movie. It felt unreal. I probably sat there for 5 minutes, which felt like an eternity, when suddenly the dogs stopped barking. Within the next few seconds, the lights flickered back on, and I sat there in disbelief, feeling as pale as a ghost. To this day, I still have no idea what happened. I can remember that night like it was yesterday. Some of you might be wondering why I didn't call the police. Honestly, I'm not sure why I didn't, but given that we lived so far from town, the police probably would have been too late, even if they did show up at all. So, was this just a huge coincidence? Or was there something more sinister at play that night? I guess we'll never really know. I will start with some background. I live in the northeast of Texas in a rural neighborhood. I live with my mom and dad, aunt, 3 siblings, and grandparents, so around 9 people in the same house. This story happened about 4 years ago on a basic Saturday around 2 in the afternoon, so it was still bright outside. My little sister was just born and was in a stroller at least 5 feet from the front door. My siblings and I were in the living room, and my mom was in the kitchen, all of us in full view of the front door, which was wide open. Mom was dancing in the kitchen when she suddenly froze, looking at the front door. My siblings heard her stop and looked up. From where we were, we could see the door was open, but we could not see outside. Confused, I asked, "What's wrong?" She turned, now fully facing the door, and said, "Hello? Can I help you?" My sister, sitting next to me, said someone was outside. I peeked out the window to see, but because the window was misted up, I only saw a blur. Truthfully, I didn't care and just ignored it all. The rest of the story will be from my mom's point of view, as she told me later. She said that she felt eyes on her and turned around to see a man standing at the foot of the door. She asked, "Can I help you?" and started walking towards him, moving my little sister away from the door. She said he started to step back, but kept his eyes locked with hers. She said that every time she moved forward, he moved back. Then he started looking around and saw our unfinished flower pots. He started asking about them. Our dad had made them, and my mom told him so. Then he asked if her husband was home, and Mom told him no. To most people, that would be a mistake, but we had a 50-pound German Shepherd and a 30-pound Boxer mix, so we all felt safe. Mom got closer, and he stepped back, putting his hands up to his waist. He said he lived in the house that looked like a church and pointed to a house a block down. The house he was pointing at was known around the neighborhood kids as the vampire house, because there were blankets covering all the windows and bars on the doors. A very creepy house. But what was even more strange was that he started walking backwards down the street. Mom quickly ran back in the house and locked the door, and we haven't seen him since. Our uncle and cousins were visiting us on our ranch. We played outside when we saw 2 young owls in our tree. Now, we had never seen owls in Texas before, and as dumb kids, we started throwing rocks at them. For some reason, they didn't fly away. They just started to bleed from the rocks hitting them. Our uncle saw us and told us to stop. They flew away, and we forgot about it until later that night. As we were getting ready to start a fire, we saw a lady coming towards our gate. She was dirty and smelled really bad. Our dad and uncle went to talk to her. When she saw my uncle, she grabbed his hand and started thanking him over and over again. He said that her grip was so strong, her nails were digging into his skin. He asked her, "For what?" She said, and I quote, "For not letting them kill my children." As the lady walked away, one of my cousins called her a filthy rat. She stopped dead in her tracks. We were at least 80 feet away from her. There was no way she could hear him. She was facing us now, and I swear, she never turned her head as she walked away. Do you think they could have been skinwalkers? And that, dear weirdlings, was my first official podcast on my new channel. I really hope you enjoyed listening to me. If you did, a thumbs up and a subscribe would be very much appreciated. Please leave some gentle CC in the comments. I would really like to make the channel even better. Let me know if I should speak slower, should I speak a bit faster. Any advice would be appreciated. Please do send me your own true, creepy, eerie stories. I would love to read them and narrate them on my channel. Without you, the channel cannot grow, so I would really appreciate some stories. And yes, I look forward to hearing from you. Until next time, remember, if you can be anything today, choose to be kind.